Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Alyeska Pipeline Service Company, fueling philanthropic programs and dedicated to creating educational and professional opportunities for Alaska Native people.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks so much for joining us here for Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. On the first graphic here, the breakup map, and not much change from yesterday, just waiting on the North Slope rivers going through a slow dissolve. And moving on to the satellite imagery, today, the next trough moving onto the coast, actually one band here, another one right behind it, a little bit of a break it looks like occurred in Nunivak Island over the Yukon Delta. And the one crossed the Alaska Range last night and fell apart, but some showers moved up into the eastern interior, and portions of the central and eastern Tanana Valley had anywhere from 1/10 to 4/10 of an inch of rain today in a 12-hour period. Otherwise, pretty good sunshine in areas here across southern Alaska, mostly from Cook Inlet, Sisseton Valley onto the east, and a little bit of clearing down over the southeast coast, and again showers with clearing periods on up to the central Arctic coast. Otherwise, a pretty big breakout here. That's due to high pressure at the surface covering much of the Gulf of Alaska on back toward Kodiak Island. And looking at the loop once again, you can see another trough had come out of the Russian Far East, and that's that next band that's just approaching the coast and on up to St. Lawrence Island to maybe the Bering Strait. Not very strong at all, and lighter precipitation than even this one. Otherwise, a lot of clouds in a west to east flow there across the Bering Sea with some breaks down toward Adak and maybe over toward Shimia. And rolling that through one more time, you can see again this area of possible clearing there over the southwest Bering Sea to the western Aleutians, and then this moisture kind of sliding onto the southeast there toward the Fox Islands. And on the chart today, have a trough here in the eastern interior that brought showers to the eastern Arctic coast in association with a 1,010 millibar low up there just south of the Brooks Range. And those showers extended all the way down to the eastern North Gulf Coast and then became quite scattered there across the Panhandle. And there was a little bit of clearing in areas and on down to the south. Otherwise, ridging right up through here, that gave that northwest flow to south central Alaska. So coming off the Alaska Range, we saw some pretty good clearing today, and that allowed the temperature at Seward to push up to 70 degrees. Otherwise, this next front bringing some light rain and showers onto the coastline, actually from the northern Alaska Peninsula right on up the west coast across Norton Sound to it's past St. Lawrence Island to the Seward Peninsula, and then a little bit of moisture on up along the northwest coast. And behind that feature, just a broad southwest flow and a lot of clouds in that with minimal clearing periods, and high pressure down to the south here, keeping that flow in place at least for another couple of days. And moving on to tonight's forecast, again that trough on the west coast really weakens as it hits the Alaska Range. So look for a little bit of an increase in the clouds here east of the mountains with risk of showers from the Aleutian Range, and that'll be mostly up the western Alaska Range. Could be some showers this evening around the Talkeetnas on up toward the northern Copper River Basin, and then showers tapering off from the Tanana Valley up into the upper Yukon. And that 1,011 millibar low still spinning, or actually moving a little farther to the north and almost onto the eastern north slope there with a chance of showers. Mostly cloudy, scattered showers back to the west, all the way to the northwest coast, and patchy area fog, pretty possible here anywhere over the Bering Sea. Could see a little bit of clearing as well in those areas, and some showers around the Pribilof Islands. Otherwise, still that north to northwest wind here coming, or clearing it out, or keeping it clear over the, actually the Gulf of Alaska, back toward Kodiak, on up into Prince William Sound and the southeastern Copper River Basin. Showers, mostly cloudy skies for the southeast coast, and again, look for some clearing on down to the south. High pressure over the Alaska Peninsula. Winds will be light, so look for possible areas of low clouds and fog to develop there. And that same pattern up into the Bering Sea, except the wind's a little breezier up that way. And looking ahead to tomorrow, we've got this pretty strong system out there near the Komodorskis, and tomorrow that will move a little farther to the east, so pretty good gale force winds with that, about 35 knots. And it looks like a good shot of rain, a lot of moisture flowing up ahead of that front and almost right up to the Russian Far East there. And then the Pribilof, or the showers that were around the Pribilofs tonight, the bulk of those move up to the southwest coast, Kuskokwim Bay, Nunivak Island, all the way around to probably Cape Romanzov, and still south or southwest flow, light. That'll keep it cloudy over all of the Bering Sea on up into the Bering Strait. Chance of showers there in the Seward Peninsula. Also Kivalina over toward Point Hope. And picking the showers back up tomorrow here over the central interior, and that'll extend to a lesser extent down into the Copper River Basin and back up toward that nearly stationary 1012 millibar low. And then possible rain or snow and fog at times, light, up on the eastern and maybe the central Arctic coast. Scattered rain showers back toward the west, and high pressure holding here over the, well, actually western Alaska at the surface. Could be some showers again developing in the afternoon around the Talkeetnas, Copper River Basin, but looks like it'll be mostly sunny here from northern Cook Inlet, Prince William Sound, back down toward Kodiak Island, and a certain extent into the western Gulf of Alaska. Isolated showers over the northern southeast coast. Otherwise, a mostly cloudy or partly sunny day for the remainder of the area, with dry conditions and high pressure holding down here to the south. And that will direct most of that moisture up to the north, and it'll take a turn to the east on Wednesday. A huge mass of moisture coming eastward there. Rain, fog, and drizzle, mostly associated with that warm front, but the upper level flow takes a turn into the interior, the high pressure to the south, and so could see some moisture possibly as far east as Fairbanks, a little more likely into Tanana. Otherwise mostly cloudy, areas of showers, Brooks Range, eastern North Slope, and at low still hanging tough there near the Brooks Range. Dry over the western Arctic coast, and patchy fog around Barrow, and really not much going on up there. And for the Panhandle, again, partly mostly cloudy, isolated showers, mostly sunny here again over south central Alaska, back down toward Kodiak Island, and pretty good day here for the Copper River Basin on up into the Tanana Valley. And then you pick up some clouds up toward Fort Yukon. Mostly sunny, possibly here for the North Gulf Coast, with areas of fog mostly down to the south, or out here in that light wind area under the surface high over Bristol Bay and the southeast Bering Sea. Temperatures today across the southeast coast, 50s for the most part, ranging from say 49 at Yakutat to 65 at, let's see, it was Annette today, this afternoon, and 58 in the Copper River Basin. 50s, lower 60s here across the North Gulf Coast and south central Alaska on up into the Sitna Valley. And we had a 58 at Gulkana, and 50s here over the Tanana Valley, with that same temperature pattern extending right up to the Brooks Range, with Anatuvik at 50 and a 54 at Arctic Village. Along the Arctic coast there, we had 35 at Barrow and 33 over at Kaktovik with Dead Horse at 39. A little farther inland, Aptasuk had 46 today with lower 40s back down toward Cape Lisburn. 40s there for the Kotzebue Sound area, Selawik Valley on over to Ambler, and had some 30s there on the coast of the Seward Peninsula. About the same for St. Lawrence Island, 40s over the southwest. And for the western areas, mid-40s for the Pribilofs, 40s out over the central and western Aleutians. Then it kicked up to 50 at Unalaska today. 40s to mid-50s here for the Alaska Peninsula, 52 at Kodiak. Looking at tonight's lows, 40s for the southeast coast, and same thing for southern Alaska here, with actually upper 30s to mid-40s right up into the upper Yukon Valley. 30s back to the northwest, lower 30s north of the mountains, and near 40 along the coast, lower to mid-40s for the Alaska Peninsula. And for the highs tomorrow, we've got lower 60s in the forecast, especially for the Susitna Valley, on down possibly into Cook Inlet, and 40s, 50s to maybe low 60s there, Bristol Bay, but cooler back out toward the coast. 50s for the Alaska Peninsula, and upper 40s for the central Aleutians. 50s to maybe 60, 61 or 2 up over the eastern interior north of the Alaska Range, and 30s to mid-40s for the North Slope and the Arctic coast, and chilly 30s back through the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island. Panhandle mostly in the 50s. And for the 3,000-foot winds, I thought flying weather was coming up. Anyway, here's this ridging in the west, northwest flow across south central Alaska and across the Gulf of Alaska, and just catching the coastline there of the Panhandle and then dropping off to the southeast. Otherwise, out to the west, we've got southwest wind flow, pretty brisk ahead of that storm, 50 knots. And that diminishes but continues on up into the Bering Strait and actually right up the western coast, or the northwest coast. And at, okay, there's flying weather for tomorrow afternoon. We've got marginal VFR over the Wrangell Mountains to the eastern Alaska Range, on down and off the coast of the Panhandle. Again, that northwest flow keeping at VFR, Kodiak Island, on up across south central Alaska and even Prince William Sound. Pretty good VFR all the way up and beyond the Arctic, or the Brooks Range area. IFR for the Arctic coast out to the west, so a lot of IFR, again with all that moisture flowing northward and then starting to take a turn to the east there. So it should show up along the Yukon Delta coast to Nunivak Island and slide right into south and southwestern Seward Peninsula. And the passes, Anaktuvik, marginal VFR to VFR, and also improving for Adigan, starting out marginal, becoming VFR, and for Lake Clark and Merrill, just VFR the entire day. Same forecast for rainy. Windy looks VFR, and Isabel as well. Mentesta, same forecast, VFR, and for Tanita, VFR. Portage looking really good, VFR tomorrow. Chilkoot and White starting out marginal, but improving probably by mid to late morning to VFR conditions. And for the freezing levels, 4,000 to 6,000 feet here over the Gulf of Alaska, on in toward the southeast coast, and then cooler air mass up to the northwest over 2,000 feet from the Seward Peninsula right up into the Chukchi Sea. At the surface, down to south of St. Lawrence Island, and then right up the coastline and onto the east. Warmer conditions back out to the southwest. There's 10,000 feet at or into the eastern Aleutians. And for icing, again, mostly above about 9,000 feet, light to isolated moderate rime, flowing northward there over the western Aleutians, and that'll be pulling eastward tomorrow night. It'll probably advance all the way into the western interior on Tuesday or on Wednesday. Otherwise, area up here from the eastern Arctic coast right down into the central interior, mostly above 5,000 feet of the mixed or rime variety there, and that same pattern also over the eastern Copper River Basin, icing free across the Panhandle. And winds a lot, or the jet stream, ridging out here over the Bering Sea, northwest flow at about 120 knots coming down from St. Lawrence Island along the southwest coast, rounding the trough and then south to north there along and just east of the border. Otherwise a trough here right over mainland Alaska, and that high still holding pretty good there over western Canada. And 9,000 feet, we've got same pattern, ridging here in the west, weak low up over the northeast, light north to northwest flow across southern Alaska, westerlies 20 knots from the Bering Sea in across Kodiak Island, picking up to about 25 knots across the southern Gulf of Alaska, but 10 knots over the Copper Basin and pretty light over the Panhandle as well. And then southwest flow, 50 knots into the western Aleutians, really diminishing as it heads northeast. And on to, well, I'm pretty sure that's the turbulence map. So after the break, Hangar Flying, I'll be back with the marine forecast.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Mary O'Connor, and I'm with the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health. Thanks to Alaska Public Media for allowing us to bring you Hangar Flying. This evening, we are happy to have Allie Burend on our show. Allie is an aircraft dispatcher with an aviation company located in Anchorage. Allie, welcome to Hangar Flying.
Hi, thanks.
A lot of people don't realize how much work goes on behind the scenes to launch a commercial flight, and aircraft dispatchers are an integral part of the team. What types of things do dispatchers at your company do?
We do all the pre-flight planning and basically all the paperwork the pilots don't like to do. But it's a lot of, you look at all the charts and you plan all the routes. You look at the weather, you look at each airport, and you decide whether it's safe to launch or not. That's the main focus of our job, is safety of flight and operational control. We work jointly with the captains and look at each aspect of the flight before the crew even comes in, and then we discuss it with the captain before the flight, and then we agree together that the flight can go.
So they're not making a decision on their own, and you're not making a decision on your own, and if you have questions, you can talk back and forth?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, anytime there's a question at hand, if a dispatcher finds something that they think's a little out of the side of the normal and might be a possible safety risk, we'll bring it up to the crew and we'll discuss it. If the dispatcher doesn't think it's safe to launch, they won't launch, even if the captain thinks it's okay. If the captain doesn't want to go, the dispatcher can't make them go. So it's a joint decision between the two of us, and well, we make it work.
Well, that's a great safety feature.
Mm-hmm.
So you went to school to learn how to do this job. Can you tell us about that school and what you did?
Yeah, well, I didn't start out wanting to do aviation or dispatching. I didn't know what dispatching was when I started college. But I went to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Prescott, Arizona, and I got my degree in meteorology. And that kind of led me down the path. It's an aviation school, and they had an area of concentration for dispatch for aviation. And I started that program. So we started out doing private ground, instrument ground, aeronautics, aerodynamics, all the stuff that a pilot would do for a pilot degree. And it wraps into our meteorology degree as well, because pilots have to take meteorology, but not quite as much. And in the end, your senior year is just a dispatching course, and it's all about dispatching and basically what the ATP would be. And at the end, you get your dispatch license.
Okay, so you took an exam to get your certification,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the same test that the pilots take, right?
It is, yeah. I've heard recently that it may have changed a little bit, but when I took it, it was the exact same thing as the ATP written. And then you do a practical exam and oral, and it's a little bit different. It's focused on dispatch. You do a flight plan, and the FAA examiner tests you on dispatch knowledge.
That was a pretty tough exam, I'm assuming. The airline transport pilot test is tough.
Yeah, I think the hardest part of it is that if you're not a pilot, if you just come into it as a civilian and you've never flown an airplane, like, you have to know how to fly an airplane on paper. So you have to know how everything works and take the test on it, but you've never actually physically done it. So it's a lot of knowledge.
And I should think that'd be hard in its own right without having that background.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's definitely helpful. Pilots getting a dispatch license is kind of an extra. It's easier for them than someone just walking off the street.
Oh, sure. And I imagine your meteorology background helped you too with dispatching.
It does quite a bit. Being able to read the weather charts and have a little bit of forecasting knowledge and really understanding how the systems work really helps you understand what is going on in the weather and the environment for the airplane to be in. So it makes for safer flights, I think.
So your company has operations in the lower 48 as well, but you do all the dispatching from Anchorage, correct?
We do, yeah. Our dispatch office is in Anchorage at the airport, and we dispatch flights out of Boston and Portland and Alaska and Anchorage.
Does that make it challenging? You have to know weather all over instead of just weather in Alaska, which is tough enough.
Yeah, and actually the meteorology degree really prepared you for lower 48 weather. They don't really talk about Alaska weather. So that was the hardest part, was relearning everything that suits Alaska. But we separate it. We do all of our Alaska flights, one dispatcher handles it, and then all of our East Coast flights, our lower 48 flights, one dispatcher handles those. So you kind of get to chunk the weather together and know what's going on in one area of the world.
And can you work just that one area so you get to know the geography and the weather patterns well?
Yeah. We just started Portland last September, and I'm already learning new things about how when the winds are coming from the west and they hit the Cascades and how it affects the weather on that west coast there, and the fog on the coast.
Oh, sure.
Learning all about that. So it's new, like learning as we go.
Yeah, all kinds of different challenges. Well, this is really interesting, Allie. Thanks for being here.
Oh yeah, thank you.
We look forward to having you back on our next show and learning more about your job as a dispatcher, and then some career tips that you might have for people who might not have any idea what dispatching is about or what it is. So
yeah, it's kind of a secret job in aviation.
Exactly.
A lot of people know about it.
Exactly, a hidden secret. So we'll look forward to that. Thank you.
Sounds good.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for supporting the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and Alaska Public Media. Until next time, fly safely.
Welcome back. Well, found the turbulence map, and tomorrow there could be some light isolated moderate chop, very isolated in the moderate there across northern Prince William Sound, and then on down from the Kenai Peninsula to Kodiak Island with that north-northwest flow, creating some mechanical turbulence there, and possibly some here along and to the west of the central southeast coast, and another batch up here from or through the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island, and then kind of a more widespread area moving northward there over the western Aleutians on into the southwest Bering Sea, associated with those 50-knot winds we saw at 9,000 and 3,000 feet. And moving on, that's old. The coast here, the southeast coast, the southwest coast of the Panhandle, northwest at 20 knots, turning westerly, and then southwest there up to the north. Small craft advisories for a time for Northern Lynn Canal, northwest 15 to 20 knots with 3 to 4 foot seas for the central and southern inside waters. And then for Wednesday, pretty light winds here, just 10 knots from the west-southwest. And not too bad down to the south, 15 to 20 knots there. Northwest 15 for Clarence Strait, southwest 10 for Stevens Passage, and just 15 knots for Wednesday for Northern Lynn Canal. And Prince William Sound tomorrow, northwest at 10, southwest 10 for Northern Cook Inlet, and then westerlies 20 to 25 knots to 15 knots there for Shelikof Strait, westerlies 20, east side of Kodiak Island, picking up to small craft advisories there for the Barren Islands and back into Kamishak Bay, and then back down to 15 to 20 knots for the coast. And then for Wednesday, staying pretty much westerly, 20 knots there for Kodiak Island. Small craft advisories continue for Kamishak Bay, the Barren Islands, on into the western North Gulf Coast. Winds for Prince William Sound picking up northwest 20 with higher gusts to 30, 35, possibly 40 knots to the western bays, and otherwise, well, I mentioned that about Kodiak Island. And for Bristol Bay, southwest 15, pretty light there for the Alaska Peninsula with southwest breezes at 10 knots and seas just 3 to 4 feet. For the Aleutian, or for Wednesday, southwest turning westerly into Bristol Bay, light variable winds there for the Pacific side of the peninsula westerlies from Castle Cape to Sitkinak at just 15 knots. Now out to the Aleutians here for the eastern areas. South to southeast, 15 to 20 knots. Small craft advisories, southeast winds across the central Aleutians, into the gales here west of Adak, and then dropping back down to 25 knots for the Shemya area. And for Tuesday, southeast 35 knots out here, that's for tomorrow. And I guess Wednesday came up first there. Otherwise, here's the gales for tomorrow. Seas 11 to as high as 17 feet. Small craft advisories for the central Aleutians. Southwest just 10 to 15 knots for the Fox Islands. And for the southwest coast, all the way up to St. Lawrence Island, southwest at 20, south 20 for the northern Bering Sea, southwest 20 for the Pribilofs. And then for Wednesday, southerlies for the Pribilofs, and then we've got small craft advisories here for the northern Bering Sea, mostly west of St. Matthew Island. Pretty light winds now for St. Lawrence Island, south to southwest 15 to 25 along the coast. And for the eastern Arctic coast, 15-knot winds here from the central coast, picking up to 20 knots toward demarcation point. Southeast 15 on the west side, and then 20 knots from the south out in that area. And then for Wednesday, we've got about the same pattern. South winds 15 to 20 knots here, and now south at just 10 knots for the western Arctic coast. And we're into a pretty light wind condition with 10-knot winds from Barrow on over to demarcation point. And for tonight, mostly cloudy, showers over the interior, staying mostly clear and fair down to the south. And on Tuesday, kind of a wet day up there on the central and eastern Arctic coast. Also with these showers over the northwest to southeast interior. And a lot of rain pushes in the next day.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.